Rain poured mercilessly over the city of New York that night, blurring the neon lights and washing away the dust of busy streets. Under a flickering streetlight sat a young woman, her body wrapped in a tattered blanket. Her name was Lila Monroe, 22, once a dreamer, now a ghost of her former self. She had been homeless for months after losing her job and apartment when her mother passed away. Yet, beneath the grime and exhaustion, her emerald eyes held a rare beauty that could melt even the coldest heart. A black Rolls-Royce stopped nearby, its tinted window slowly rolling down. Inside sat Alexander Steele, the city's youngest billionaire. Known for his ruthlessness in business and charm with women, Alexander was not one to notice anyone beneath his world. But that night, as his eyes met Lila's, something stirred within him. There was no makeup, no glamour, just raw pain and resilience. His driver, uncertain, asked, "Sir, shall we go?" But Alexander didn't respond. He watched as Lila tried to light a small candle to warm herself. The flame flickered weakly, and he suddenly ordered, "Stop the car." He stepped out, his expensive shoes splashing in puddles, and walked toward her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, an unfamiliar concern in his tone. Lila blinked, uncertain if this was real. "I'm fine," she muttered, embarrassed. "Please don't pity me." Alexander knelt down beside her. "It's not pity," he said. "It's curiosity." That night, he handed her an umbrella and a card with his name. "If you ever need help, call me," he whispered before walking away. Lila stared at the card, the rain mixing with her tears. She didn't know then that her life had just changed forever. Days passed. Lila tried to forget the encounter, but the name on that card haunted her. Alexander Steele. She had heard of him before, the billionaire behind Steele Enterprises, one of the world's largest tech firms. She didn't belong in his world. Yet hunger and exhaustion left her desperate. One morning, she finally dialed the number. A woman with a refined voice answered. "Steele Enterprises. How may I assist?" Lila stammered. Mr. Steele told me to call." There was a brief pause, then, "One moment, please." Minutes later, Alexander's smooth voice came through. "Lila Monroe," he said, remembering her name without hesitation. "I was hoping you'd call." She didn't know what to say. "I just need a job," she confessed. Alexander didn't hesitate. "Come to my office tomorrow at 9. Don't worry about what you wear." The next morning, she walked into his glass skyscraper, her thrift store dress trembling with each nervous step. The receptionist stared but said nothing when Alexander himself appeared in the lobby. He offered his hand, smiling warmly. "You came," he said. That day, Alexander gave her a temporary position in his charity division. But as the days passed, he found excuses to see her more, asking for reports, sharing coffee breaks, even offering to drive her home. What started as kindness began to feel like something deeper. Yet, the whispers around the office grew. People mocked her, calling her the billionaire's stray girl. Lila tried to ignore them, but she couldn't ignore her own feelings. Every time Alexander smiled, her heart skipped. But she also knew a love between a billionaire and a homeless girl was bound to face storms she wasn't ready for. Weeks passed, and Lila slowly became a quiet presence in Alexander Steele's world. She worked diligently, never complaining, often staying late to file reports or assist with the company's charity drives. Alexander noticed everything: how she smiled at janitors, how she offered coffee to interns, and how she never once acted entitled. One night, while reviewing documents in his office, Alexander found her asleep at her desk, her head resting on a pile of files. He stood watching her for a long moment, something unexplainable softening inside him. Carefully, he placed a blanket over her shoulders. The next morning, she woke to find the billionaire asleep in his own office chair, having stayed all night to make sure she got home safely. Something changed between them after that, an invisible thread that words couldn't define. They started sharing lunches, then long conversations. She learned that beneath his suits and empire, Alexander was lonely. His parents had died young, leaving him with wealth but no warmth. Lila, meanwhile, spoke of her struggles, her mother's illness, the betrayal of a friend who stole her savings, the endless nights under bridges. One evening, as the city lights glittered below his penthouse balcony, Alexander said softly, "You remind me that life isn't about what we own, but who we are when we have nothing." Lila turned to him, her eyes shimmering. "And you remind me that not all rich men are cold." Their eyes locked. The world fell silent. He took a step closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The tension was unbearable, electric. Yet, just as their lips almost touched, Lila pulled back. "I can't," she whispered, trembling. "I don't belong in your world." But as she walked away, Alexander knew he was already in love. Rumors spread like wildfire. A tabloid headline screamed, "Billionaire steals secret love affair with street girl?" The photo, grainy but undeniable, showed Alexander and Lila walking out of his car late at night. Overnight, her life turned into chaos. Paparazzi hounded her, employees whispered cruelly, and social media called her a gold digger. Lila tried to quit the next morning. "This is destroying your reputation," she told him. But Alexander refused. "Let them talk," he said firmly. "I don't care what they think." But the board of directors did care. At an emergency meeting, they warned Alexander that his relationship could tarnish the company. One executive sneered, "You're risking billions for a charity case." Alexander's jaw tightened. "She's not a charity case," he said, his voice cold as steel. "She's a person." Still, Lila couldn't bear the scrutiny. She left a resignation letter on his desk and disappeared from the office. For days, Alexander searched for her, driving through alleys and shelters, but she was nowhere. When he finally found her sitting by the river with her backpack, he said, "You can run from me, Lila, but not from what's in your heart." Tears filled her eyes. "Your world isn't built for people like me." "Then I'll build a new world," he replied quietly, taking her hand. Weeks later, Alexander's company hosted its annual charity gala, a luxurious event filled with royalty, celebrities, and millionaires. Lila, living in a shelter again, didn't expect an invitation. But one arrived, delivered by a driver with a single white rose. That evening, she hesitated before walking into the grand ballroom. Her dress, simple but elegant, made every head turn. Whispers filled the air. "Isn't that the homeless girl?" Alexander spotted her instantly. His breath caught. She was radiant, glowing in soft light like a dream reborn. He approached, ignoring the cameras and the murmurs, and offered his hand. "Dance with me," he said, as they waltzed under the chandeliers. All eyes were on them. For the first time, Lila didn't care. She laughed, spun, and let herself believe that fairy tales might be real, even if just for a night. When the music ended, Alexander whispered, "Lila, I don't want this to end. Move in with me." She froze. "What if I lose myself in your world?" He smiled gently. "Then I'll help you find yourself again." That night, their hearts crossed the line from attraction to something deeper, something that frightened them both. Not everyone celebrated their love. Alexander's business rival, Veronica Hale, who had long desired both his affection and his company, saw Lila as a threat. She hired investigators to dig into Lila's past and twisted the truth. Days later, headlines screamed, "Lila Monroe, con artist who trapped billionaire steal." Fake documents claimed she had used fake identities to access charity funds. The board suspended Lila's access, and the police were called for questioning. Lila broke down, insisting she was innocent. But Alexander, faced with overwhelming proof, looked torn. "Alex, you don't believe this, do you?" she cried. He hesitated, and that silence shattered her. "I thought you saw me," she whispered through tears. "But maybe you only saw what you wanted to fix." She left that night, her heart in ruins. A week later, Alexander discovered the truth. His security team traced the forged documents back to Veronica Hale's assistant. Furious, Alexander stormed into her office. "You ruined an innocent woman to hurt me," he said, slamming the evidence on her desk. Veronica smirked. "You were never meant for her. You belong with your kind." Alexander's eyes darkened. Then I'll show you who I belong to. He immediately held a press conference, clearing Lila's name publicly. Cameras flashed as he declared, Lila Monroe is not a fraud. She's the most honest person I've ever known, and I love her. Across town, Lila watched on an old TV at the shelter, tears streaming down her face. He believed her. Alexander found her again, in the same spot he first met her, under that flickering streetlight. This time, he knelt before her, rain soaking his expensive suit. I should have trusted you, he said softly. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Lila looked at him, her heart warring between pain and love. You broke me, Alexander. He nodded. Then let me spend the rest of my life rebuilding you. She hesitated, but when he took her hand and pressed it to his heart, she felt the truth. He wasn't just a billionaire, he was a man willing to lose everything for love. Lila moved into Alexander's penthouse, but not as a charity case, as his equal. She enrolled in business courses and began managing Steel Foundation's outreach programs for homeless youth. Together, they launched Project Hope, building shelters and job centers across the city. The press now called her the Billionaire's Angel. One evening, Alexander surprised her with a rooftop garden he built just for her. You once told me the streetlight was your only home, he said. Now you have stars. She kissed him, not out of gratitude, but love. A year later, under the same streetlight where their story began, Alexander and Lila were married. No grand ballroom, no celebrities, just a few close friends, a string of fairy lights, and the rain softly falling. As they exchanged vows, Alexander said, You taught me that love isn't about riches, but redemption. Lila smiled through tears. And you taught me that even the broken can be loved back to life. When he kissed her, the city around them faded. For a moment, time stood still, a billionaire and a once homeless girl proving that sometimes love really does conquer all. And under that same streetlight, their forever began.